Hello, my name is Katie Huang, and on today's agenda we have rhetorical fallacies. Especially, we're focusing on the topic of hasty generalization. What is hasty generalization, you asked? Well, I'm glad you do. Based on the definition of Purdue University, it is drawing conclusion based on insufficient or biased evidence. Basically, it's saying hasty generalization is when someone draws conclusion using data that are too small or too few to sum up the whole population. It is like saying, for example, when you see a chicken with 2 feet and you're just making assumptions in your head saying, oh, all 2 things with 2 feet must be a chicken. So you just go around and looking people and telling people, oh, you have 2 feet, so you must be a chicken, right? Well, if you think this way, I'm just well say just keep it in your head and probably don't say it out loud. So we really need to be cautious about hasty generalizations when we're having a conversation because it can misrepresent fact or data and misleading the audience into false ideas. For example, when you see an article about only one example of a man who's been smoking since he was 15 and now at 75 he died of old age and not of lung cancer or anything. And you're just making assumptions thinking, oh, this one example tells me that even though you have been smoking for 60 years, you're not going to die of lung cancer, you're not going to have any diseases caused by smoking. So you think that smoking must not, you must think that smoking is not harmful to your body, but sadly I have to break it down to you, smoking is not good for your health. It is scientifically proven to be harmful with all the chemicals in your body and smoke. So we really need to take notice that because hasty generalization can happen in anytime, anywhere, especially in commercials, movies, or even in our everyday life. Or for example, in a commercial a couple years ago by Benz, featuring a blonde girl in a library. And this blonde girl just walks up to the librarian and speaks, "Hi, hello, I want a fries, burger, and a milkshake, please." And with her killing smile, but then the librarian just looks at her and saying, "This is the library." And then blonde girl just looks around and saying, "Oh, I understand. I want a fries, burger, and a milkshake, please." So this example, the audience might think that based on this example, that blonde girls must be all stupid and dumb. They cannot really tell when to order burgers, fries, and milkshake in a library or in a fast food store or anything. But in fact, it is not, okay? Blonde girls are not all stupid, and we should not generalize people like that. In movies, for example, in the movie Mean Girls, where the character Katie, played by Lindsay Lohan, just goes into a classroom, and then the principal just said, "Oh, so we have a transfer student from Africa." The teacher immediately looked at the black girl in the middle of the classroom and said, "Oh, welcome." But the black girl just looked confused and said, "I'm from Michigan." I'm probably thinking, "I'm here for the whole year. What are you talking about?" But this is another example of hasty generalization because this teacher thinks that people from Africa must be all black. Must all be black. This is not true because people from Africa, probably they're whites, they're Asian, they're black people. There's all kinds of people in Africa, not just black people. Just one example, one very clear example of hasty generalization. And in everyday life, it can happen it can result in stereotypes. For example, when you have one American friend always comes to school or goes to work with a cup of coffee in his or her hand, and you just think, oh, so Americans must like coffee, right? All Americans like coffee, which is not true, in case you don't know. And then maybe you just see a Bruce Lee movie and you're just thinking, oh, so all Chinese people must know Kung Fu. And another is probably when you listen to a couple of rappers and they happens to be black people, and they just assume that, oh, so all black people must like to rap, or all black people are rappers, which is also not true. And then from my own experience, where hasty generalizations happens around me, is when I was on a bus and the bus driver just yell at the car nearby and say, "Oh, get out of the way," or something like that. And then he just turns to the passenger nearby and said, "Do you see how that woman drive? I'm telling you, women are such bad drivers. We should keep them from driving." Again, this is a hasty generalizations happening here. Not because just because this woman cannot drive or cannot drive well doesn't mean that all women are bad drivers. In fact, I've known a couple of drivers who are female drivers that are really good drivers. They can really compete in a race car or something. Thus, we need to really be careful about hasty generalizations, like misleading people into false ideas, saying just because this happens, so all of this must be true, which is not. So be careful about hasty generalizations happen in your life, and thank you.